her galleries funded by counterfeit deals and forged provenance papers. She'd made a fortune turning forgeries into legends. Her motto was simple, asterisk if the story's beautiful enough, the truth doesn't matter. Asterisk Julian had always despised that. You sell ghosts, he once told her. Stingaleries backe fies hand still fleck Churchill. You take the spirit out of art and replace it with a price tag. She had smirked then, lighting a cigarette. You write ghosts, darling. Don't be self-righteous about it. He'd stared at her for a long time, eyes dark and glinting like obsidian. One day, your ghost will start talking back. Now, years later, the words came back to her as if whispered from inside the golden envelope she held. She'd been drinking. When the courier arrived, a handsome young man in a red tuxedo, who bowed and said, "Delivery for Miss Clara Harrington, courtesy of the Keene estate. Her stomach had dropped." "You must be mistaken." He smiled politely. "We never are, ma'am." And then he began to sing, asterisk the woman who paints in counterfeit dreams. Gilded her guilt in gallery gleams. She framed a seat and sold it twice. Now hear his song, your art's the price. Asterisk the sound was clear and cruel. His voice carried through the glass hallways, and though she screamed for him to stop, he sang every verse without hesitation. By the time he finished, tears streaked her makeup and her hand shook so violently she couldn't even light her cigarette. "Take your money," she hissed, throwing a stack of bills at his feet. "Never come back." But the courier only bowed again, eyes as calm as death. "You can't buy silence from the dead, ma'am." She slammed the door behind him, but the words clung to her like smoke. For hours, Clara wandered her penthouse, pacing between her sculptures and stolen portraits, the skyline glittering like a trap beyond her windows. The city had never felt so empty. Every reflective surface, the mirrors, the framed glass, the polished marble seemed to hum faintly, just under her hearing. She tried to call Sophie. The number was disconnected. Miles, too. Ezra, well, she'd read about him in the papers. Asterisk heart failure. Asterisk, they'd said. Asterisk poetic justice. Asterisk, the tabloids whispered. Clara poured another drink, staring at her reflection. Her face looked older now, tired. The light caught her diamond necklace, the same one Sophie had once worn. She remembered how it had passed through their circle, like a cursed relic, a chain of borrowed guilt. Her phone bug-howleted. "T'en en suis red?" A voice she hadn't heard in a decade filled her ear, to calm, familiar. "Hello, Clara." She froze. "This isn't funny." "Whoever you are, still trying." To sound unbothered, the voice interrupted, gently mocking. "Eglash." "Yeah, with the same cruel refrain. Asterisk, you buried me, but I kept the pen. Asterisk, it wasn't always this way. Once, we were inseparable friends, family, lovers of convenience and ambition, depending on the day. Our gatherings were crowded with champagne, polished smiles, and the stench of fear that came from people who only knew how to climb by stepping on others. I had been one of them, until I learned what it cost to be liked by those who would rather see you starve than shine. The story began long, before the telegrams, before death turned my voice into an echo they couldn't silence. It started in the summer of 2012, in the heart of Manhattan, when my name Julian Keene was still whispered with both admiration and envy. I was a playwright back then, young enough to believe that art could redeem the corrupt, foolish enough to think friendship could survive success. The first play that made my name was Asterisk the Bone Orchard Asterisk, a cruel, glittering thing about betrayal and inheritance. It sold out every seat. Think I'm dangerous. Ezra leaned in, close enough for me to smell the gin on his breath. "Julian," he whispered, "you asterisk are asterisk dangerous. That's why we need to keep you close." Those words would replay in my head for years. I didn't understand their meaning then. I thought he was flattering me. I didn't realize it was a warning or a promise. By winter, I was broke. My second play had been mysteriously delayed by production issues. My contract had been renegotiated without my consent. The royalties from Asterisk the Bone Orchard Asterisk were tied up in litigation. I called Ezra's office a dozen times, but his assistant said he was always in meetings. When I saw him at a gala, he smiled like nothing was wrong and told me to be patient. Patience doesn't feed you. It doesn't pay rent or buy insulin when your body starts to betray you. When I found out that Miles had sold my unfinished script to a streaming network under his own name, I didn't even have the strength to scream. The story asterisk my story asterisk was being filmed in Vancouver. And they changed the title to asterisk inheritance game asterisk I watched the trailer online one night. Coughing blood into a napkin as the characters I'd created spoke words I'd written alone in the dark. Sophie tried to comfort me. "You'll write something better," she said. "You always do. I don't think I can," I whispered. "They've taken everything." She looked away. "Maybe you shouldn't have trusted them." She left 2 weeks later. I heard she'd moved in with Ezra. I started writing again, not plays, not scripts, but something else. A ledger. Every lie, every theft, every betrayal. I wrote their names and what they'd done to me in neat, careful handwriting. It wasn't rage that drove me, not anymore. It was clarity. I began to plan. When the diagnosis came lung cancer, terminal, I didn't cry. The doctor said 6 months. I smiled. "That's long enough," I told him. I spent those months crafting my final work, something unlike anything I'd ever written. Noah! Play. A performance that would live beyond me. I recorded messages, drafted letters, and left instructions with my lawyer. Every detail mattered: the timing, the delivery, the audience. When I died in February of 2016, they thought it was over. They came to the funeral, all dressed in black, pretending to grieve. Ezra cried crocodile tears and gave a eulogy about the brilliance of my friend. Miles sent flowers. Sophie wore a diamond necklace I recognized as my mother's heirloom. They buried me in Greenwood Cemetery under a simple marble stone. But me the one in motion. The first telegram arrived on the anniversary of my death. Untouchable called at Ezra's office. He sang in perfect pitch. Asterisk, you took his words. You took his name. But guilt, my dear, outlasts the fame. You thought him gone, but hear him near. He writes again, year after year. Asterisk, they laughed at first. Thought it was a prank. But then came the second telegram, the third, the fourth, each one sharper, more personal, more cruel. They revealed secrets only I could have known. Things whispered in private, since confessed over whiskey and desperation. Every year, the song changed. Every year, I rewrote it in advance, anticipating their new failures. On a chef made, no matter what. By the 5th year, Ezra had sold his company. Clara had been arrested for fraud. Miles had disappeared. Sophie, poor, lovely Sophie, was seen screaming at the messenger, tearing the envelope apart as if she could shred the guilt itself. And yet the telegrams kept coming. Because vengeance, unlike love, does not die with the body. It lingers. It sings. It remembers. Now! It's been 10 years since they lowered me into the ground. I wonder if they still hear my voice when they sleep. I wonder if they sing along. Ezra stopped sleeping the night the 10th telegram arrived. It wasn't the song itself, though. The melody still wormed its way into his skull, like a parasite, but the line at the end that undid him. Asterisk, by the time you read this. Ezra, the walls will have begun to whisper. Asterisk, he'd laughed at first, a dry, trembling sound. Then, later that night, as the wind moaned through the vents of his lake house in the Catskills, he heard it. A faint hum at first, like static behind the drywall. Then a voice, whispering fragments of lyrics he didn't remember. He tore the place apart, tripped the speakers from the walls, smashed his record player, even unplugged the refrigerator, but still, the singing returned, soft as breath. It wasn't possible. Julian was dead. Ezra had seen the body. He'd paid for the coffin himself. Yet there it was again, humming through the pipes. Asterisk, you buried me, but I kept the pen. Asterisk, he hadn't always been a coward. There was a time when Ezra Cole had been the golden boy of New York theater, the man who could turn anyone's script into gold. The producer who discovered genius and polished it until it shone for the world. But Julian had been different. Julian hadn't wanted to be discovered. He'd wanted to be remembered. That difference had frightened Ezra in ways he couldn't admit, even to himself. The morning after the first telegram, Ezra had called Miles. "You get one too?" he'd asked, voice shaking only slightly. Miles had laughed. "Yeah, weird, right? Some psycho fan. Ignore it." But Ezra couldn't ignore it. Because the song wasn't random, it was intimate. It knew things. Second telegram had mentioned Ezra's affair with Sophie, which only Julian could have known. The third described the night Ezra altered the contracts to make sure Julian lost the rights to Asterisk the Bone Orchard. Asterisk. Odd forward. The lyrics match exact clause he'd ed. That was when Ezra hired a private investigator. The man came back 3 weeks later pale and trembling, claiming the telegrams were legally sanctioned. Julian's estate run by a trust under the name Asterisk Keen Legacy Holdings. Asterisk had explicit instructions to commission, fund, and deliver the songs annually, forever. There's no loophole, the investigators said. He locked it in airtight. For years, Ezra had paid lawyers to challenge it. They always came back empty-handed. X sans terre veuve. Never seen anything like it, one said. It's not harassment, it's inheritance. Tonight, though, was different. Tonight, Ezra was alone in the lake house, the wind screaming outside, the telegram lying open on the piano. The singer this year had been a young woman velvet voice. Porcelain, Smile, who performed it right there in his study, standing where Julian had once. Paced, wine glass in hand, explaining the art of vengeance as if it were theology. She'd sung, Asterisk, your glass floors cracked, your empire fell, you bartered truth, and bought yourself hell. But don't you weep, don't you repent, the show goes on. It pays the rent. And then she'd left, bowing deeply, as if exiting a stage. Ediano Atzagol. Envelope beside it. There was something else inside this year, a folded sheet of paper, handwritten in the same blue ink Julian had loved. He hesitated before opening it. The handwriting was unmistakable, looping, deliberate, precise. Asterisk, I told you once that you only produce stories you wish you'd lived. Tell me, Ezra, how does this one end? Asterisk, the letter wasn't dated, but the ink looked fresh. He poured himself a drink. You are dead, he muttered to the empty room. A crash from upstairs cut him off, glass shattered. He froze, staring toward the staircase. The whispering began again. Asterisk, by the time you read this, asterisk, his breath hitched. He moved up the stairs slowly, each step creaking beneath him. The sound came from his old study, the room where he kept Julian's manuscripts locked. In a fireproof safe. He'd told himself he'd hold on to them as investment, but he'd never had the courage to sell them. The door was open. The window, too. Curtains fluttered like pale ghosts. He stepped inside, heart hammering. The safe door hung ajar. Inside, where the stack of papers had been, there was only one sheet left, a title page. Asterisk, the telegram, years, asterisk, and beneath it, in smaller letters, asterisk written and directed by Julian Keen, asterisk Ezra dropped the glass in his hand. It shattered at his feet, the whiskey soaking into the Persian rug. Downstairs, the piano began to play by itself. Slowly, hesitantly, like someone warming up, a melody he recognized. He stumbled down, half drunk, half dreaming, watching the keys depress without fingers. The song built soft, sweet, mournful. Then the voice was ain't Wade. It filled the air, unmistakably real. Julian's voice. Asterisk, you always said the show must go on. Ezra, it will. But you're not the producer anymore. Asterisk, Ezra screamed. The sound cut through the night, like glass breaking underwater. By morning, the police would find him there, collapsed beside the piano, eyes open and blood pressure nil. The coroner called it a heart attack. The newspapers called it tragedy. But when the 12th telegram arrived the following year at a asterisk, they'd skip our beat. Asterisk one by one, they fade away, but the chorus grows year by day. He writes, he waits, beneath the loam, each song a step that leads them. Home, asterisk, and somewhere, in a locked vault in Brooklyn, my estate's executor crossed another name off the list. Clara was next. Clara Harrington had always known how to make an entrance sequence, champagne, the kind of laugh that made men feel like they were being let in on a secret. But the night she opened the 11th telegram, there was no laughter, no glittering crowd, only the trembling sound of her own breathing echoing off the mirrored walls of her penthouse. She'd built her empire on deception half. Always were good at pretending Julian's dead. A soft chuckle. Yes, I am. The line crackled, but the voice continued, intimate and measured. You know, I always admired your eye. You could spot a fake from across a room. So tell me, Clara, when you look in the mirror, what do you see? The line went dead. She dropped the phone, chest tight, breath uneven. The hum in the room seemed to swell until it became a low vibration, rattling the crystal glass on the counter. Her gallery lights flickered. From the corner of the room, one of her prized paintings asterisk the lovers in smoke asterisk. A supposed lost piece of 19th century romanticism began to peel at the edges. Slowly, delicately, as if the canvas were shedding its disguise. Beneath the paint, faint letters began to emerge. Written in blue ink, asterisk confession is art. 2, asterisk, she screamed, stumbling backward. The lights went out. The entire penthouse sank into silence, except for a single, faint, sounded distant melody, drifting through the air vents. It was the song from the telegram. Clara ran for the elevator, but the button wouldn't light. The doors refused to close. She tried the stairs, barefoot, shaking. Descending, flight after flight until her knees gave out. When she finally pushed through the lobby doors and into the freezing night, she thought she saw someone waiting for her across the street, a figure in a long coat, head bowed, hands clasped behind his back. She blinked, and he was gone. The next morning, the cleaning staff found her lying in the middle of the gallery floor, surrounded by broken glass and ruined art. The police called it an accident to fall, maybe. The tabloids speculated about drugs, stress, guilt. But on her office desk sat the golden envelope, pristine and untouched, as if someone had placed it there after she died. Inside, written in Julian's looping hand, was a single line, asterisk to down. The truth is the only masterpiece, asterisk the courier. Delivered the 12th telegram, a week later, this time to an abandoned address on the Lower East Side. It was meant for Miles. Miles. Faulkner had been running for so long that he no longer remembered what it felt like to stand still. Every new city was just another disguised Berlin, then Lisbon, then back to the States under a different name. He told himself he was alive because he was clever, because Jews couldn't reach him. But deep down he knew the orders. The first telegram had found him in London, tucked in the mail, slot of his rented, flat like a threat, wrapped in gold. He'd burned it before, reading the last line. The second arrived 6. Montlate's hotel in Prague. He'd tipped the courier heavily to lose the sender's address. By the time the 10th came at a cafe in Florence, where no one even knew his real name, Miles understood there was no running from a dead man's will. And yet here he was, living in a decaying apartment above a pawn shop in Brooklyn, undies and a Michael Feddenwood. The royalties from asterisk inheritance game asterisk had dried up, and no studio wanted to touch him after his plagiarism scandal. Every time he tried to write again, his mind froze. It was as though the words themselves had turned on him, whispering Julian's name through every blank page. The telegram came at dusk. A knock on the door, 3 sharp raps, evenly spaced. He froze mid-sip of whiskey, staring at the door as the fading light bled through the blinds. Miles Faulkner, voice showed softly. He didn't move. He hadn't gone by that name in years. I think you have the wrong. The voice interrupted him. Julian sends his regards. Miles's skin went cold. He opened the door slowly. The courier was a young man, pale, wearing a black suit and red tie. He held the golden envelope with white gloves, as though handling evidence. If you'd prefer, the courier said, I can sing it outside. But the acoustics are better indoors. Miles swallowed hard. Just give me the letter. I'm afraid to talk. And then Besford closed the door. The courier began singing. Asterisk, he stole the ink. He stole the play. He asterisk, sold his friend. Then ran away. Butevry. Asterisk stage remembers crime. The curtain falls in perfect asterisk time. Asterisk the song filled the apartment, each note sharp as glass. The words echoed against the cracked walls, growing louder, impossibly louder. Miles clutched his ears, shouting for it to stop, but the melody didn't falter. Stop it! I said stop. The courier finished the final verse, voice calm and clear. Then he handed over the envelope, bowed slightly, and walked down the hall. Miles stood shaking, the golden paper heavy, in his hand. He ripped it open. Inside was a small cassette tape and a note in Julian's unmistakable handwriting. Asterisk for your ears only. Play asterisk at once. You'll know when asterisk he stared at the tape. He didn't even own a cassette player anymore. But something in him, curiosity, guilt, maybe. Hunger for closure drove him downstairs to the pawn shop. The old man behind the counter barely looked up when Miles asked if he had a player. Back shelf, the man grunted. $15. Miles paid in crumpled bills, carried it upstairs, and set it on the table. The tape clicked into place with a soft whirring sound. Then came Julian's voice. Miles, it said, smooth and cold, like the first cut of Ascalpel. If you're hearing this, congratulations, you've outlived your accomplices. Ezra's heart gave out. Clara fell from her own vanity, and Sophie. A pause, a quiet sigh. Well, we'll get to Sophie soon. Miles's throat tightened. I imagine you're wondering how I knew where to find you, Julian continued. But you should know by now I always did my research. I always left a record. You, more than anyone, should understand the power of a well-kept draft. The voice chuckled softly. I've been reading your new manuscript, the orphans, debt, a bold title. Shame it's mine again. Miles stumbled back, heart hammering. That's impossible, he whispered. No one's read that, but I have, the voice went on. Every word, Miles, even the parts you haven't written yet, the tape. Hissed. For a moment, Miles thought it had. Stop, but then, faintly, he heard it, breathing, slow, shallow, as though someone was standing behind him. He turned. Nothing. Just the dim room, the peeling wallpaper, the curtains swaying in the draft. Then, from the cassette, a whisper. Look to your left. He did. The typewriter on his desk, the one he hadn't used in weeks, had begun to type on its own. Keys clacked furiously, ink ribbon trembling. He stepped closer, eyes wide, watching as words appeared across the paper. Confession. Then, beneath it, line by line, he took the words. He took the life. Now, he must take the blame. Miles Faulkner, said Julian's voice again. Calm and merciless. This is your final draft. The tape clicked. Silence. Miles stood there, chest heaving, staring at the page. He tore it from the typewriter, crumpled it, threw it across the room, then stopped. There was another page already, feeding through. Another line appearing by itself. He ends where the play began. A sound outside, footsteps in the hallway. Someone stopped at his door. 3 knocks. Miles Faulkner said this time came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Eba went to the table. The cassette began to rewind itself. When the police found him the next morning, the apartment was silent. The window open, the chair by the desk overturned. On the typewriter, one final page waited. In perfect blue ink, it read, 3 down. And Sophie, my dear, you're next. Somewhere, in an office lined with steel cabinets and dead man's papers, my executor smiled faintly, folded the telegram schedule for the next year, and whispered, on cue. Sophie Dellen woke up to the sound of rain hammering against the window. A dull and relentless percussion that made her skin crawl. She hated storms, always had. They reminded her of the night Julian died, the night the city turned slick and black as oil, the night she stood outside the hospital room with a half-finished apology on her tongue and a diamond necklace around her throat. It had been 10 years since then. 10 years plus Zelaski's the lever taken. But lately, the past had been clawing its way back through the walls of her carefully built life. The calls came first. Static on the line. Followed by silence. Then came the emails, blank messages with attachments labeled rehearsal tape. She never opened them. Then, 3 nights ago, she found a folded note on her windshield, written in blue ink. You forgot your line. Now the rain had come. As if on cue, and Sophie knew deep in her bones that the next telegram would arrive before dawn. She got out of bed, pulled a silk robe around her shoulders, and stared at herself in the mirror. The actress staring back looked tired. The face was the same one the tabloids still adored, porcelain, poised, a little tragic, but the eyes were older. They carried the weight of too many lies told for applause. She poured herself a drink and sat by the window. The city outside pulsed with wet neon. Somewhere down below, a siren wailed. You always did love your drama, she murmured to the ghost she couldn't see. When the knock came, it was soft, polite, almost apologetic. She's the Sophie Dellen? A voice called from the other side of the door. Her heart skipped. Yes? Special delivery. Ma'am, she didn't move. Leave it. I'm afraid I can't do that. The voice was smooth, male, professional. It's personal. She hesitated, then opened the door just enough to see him, a young man in a tuxedo, rain dripping from his hat brim, holding a golden envelope sealed with crimson wax. He smiled faintly. It's an honor to meet you, Miss Dellen. He spoke of you often. She froze. Who? But she already knew. Mr. Keene, the man said simply. He left very detailed instructions. Her throat tightened. You can't be serious. He tilted his head. Would you like me to sing it here, or would you prefer the balcony? She wanted to slam the door in his face, to scream, to laugh, to collapse. Instead, she whispered, Get it over with. The man took a deep breath and began to sing. The actress who wept for a ghost in the wings, played love like a part, forgot what truth brings. Her tears were rehearsed. Her smile was a mask the curtain will fall. When I finish my task, his voice was beautiful, haunting. Perfectly in tune, like something composed for a requiem. Sophie stood frozen, the melody wrapping around her like a noose. By the final verse, her vision blurred. He loved you still, despite the deceit, but love is a role that ends in repeat. The courier stopped, bowed, handed her the envelope. Thank you, she whispered, though she didn't know why. He nodded once and walked away, leaving muddy footprints down the marble hall. Sophie shut the door, locked it, then tore the envelope open with shaking hands. Inside was a letter, one page, handwritten. Julian's writing again. My dearest Sophie, you always said I didn't know where reality ended and performance began. But you were wrong. Premier Alouette knew. The tragedy is that you didn't. You played my lover in life, my betrayer in death, and now finally yourself. But there's one last act to rehearse. You'll find your cue. Waiting backstage at the Lyric Theatre. Midnight. Come alone. It's time for your encore. With love always, J. the Lyric Theatre. Sophie hadn't set foot there in years. It was where the Bone Orchard had premiered. Where she'd first kissed Julian in the wings. Where everything began and ended. Her hands trembled as she folded the letter. You're gone, she whispered too. The empty room. You can't, but she couldn't finish the sentence. Because deep down, she wasn't sure he was gone at all. At 11:47 p.m., she arrived at the Lyric. The old marquee was dark, the front doors chained shut. But the stage door around the alley hung open, a faint light flickering inside. She stepped in. The air smelled of dust, old curtains, and rain. Every creak of the floor echoed through the vast, empty space. Julian, she called softly. No answer. She walked to the stage. The floorboards groaned under her heels, and then suddenly the house lights flickered on. The theatre was full. Not with people, but with mannequins, seated in every row. Each one wore a mask of paper faces painted crudely in blue ink. Some smiled, some cried, some stared blankly forward. As a santé. Of the stage stood a grand piano. On it rested a single tape recorder. Sophie approached slowly. Her reflection shimmered in the black lacquer. A note was taped to the recorder. Asterisk, press play. Asterisk. She hesitated then, pressed it. Julian's voice filled the theatre. Bravo, Sophie, he said softly. You made it to the final act. Tears burned her eyes. Why are you doing this? He whispered. Je vois. Continued. Do you remember what you said to me that night in the hospital? You told me you loved me. You told me you never meant to hurt me. And yet, hours before, you'd signed the papers that stripped me of my rights to Asterisk the Bone Orchard. Asterisk. You sold me out for a promise of stardom. But you knew, even then, that every role ends the same way alone on stage. She backed away. Stop it. Please, you were the only one I ever forgave, the voice said. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. The piano keys began to move slowly, gracefully. A familiar melody, Asterisk the Bone Orchard's Asterisk closing theme. Julian, she whispered. Please, say the line, his voice commanded. What? The one you never finished that night. She shook her head, trembling. Say it. Her voice broke. I'm sorry. The tape clicked. Silence. Then, one by one, the paper-masked mannequins began to turn their heads toward her. Sophie screamed. The lights went out. When the custodians arrived at dawn, they found the stage door open, rain pooling on the warped floorboards. Sophie Dellen was gone. Only her robe remained, draped across the piano bench. On the stage floor, written in blue ink, were 3 words, asterisk for down, curtain, asterisk the following spring. The final telegram was scheduled. Not to a person, but to a place. Greenwood Cemetery. The rain had washed the city clean that morning, but Greenwood still smelled of rust and memory. The crows were restless, the kind of restless that made the air feel too alive for a graveyard. My executor arrived early, as he always did, with his black umbrella, his leather briefcase, and his silence. He was a man who knew how to keep promises, even to the dead. The marks I designated anti-leontine asterisk bullet. Chiseled in faint italics. A line no one noticed except those who knew how to look. Asterisk, he wrote it all down. Asterisk, today was the 10th anniversary. The final telegram day. The finale. A golden envelope waited on the grave, dry despite the rain. It bore no name this time, just an embossed mask of comedy and tragedy, the seal I'd drawn myself all those years ago. The executor knelt, brushed the leaves away, and checked his watch. 11:11 a.m., right on cue. He opened the briefcase, pulled out the last record, and set the small, battery-powered gramophone on the wet grass. Its brass horn gleamed against the grey sky. He placed the needle and stepped back as the crackling began. Then came my voice. Spoiler alert, it said. With that dry humor, I could never resist. This is not a confession. It's a curtain call. If anyone else had been there, they might have seen the executor, smile just a ghost of one. I continued. When I started this performance, I didn't want revenge. I wanted remembrance. You can kill a man, but you can't kill his story. Ezra, Clara, Miles, Sophie. Each of them thought they could bury me in silence. What had in a sense is vow. I simply chose to fill it. A pause. A low piano chord, soft, mournful, unmistakably asterisk the bone, orchard asterisk's final theme. You've done well, my friend, I told the executor. Every year, you've played your part. Every verse, every envelope, every carefully orchestrated moment. The audience didn't know it was you behind the curtain, and that's how it should be. But even the unvinchelu ked dawned from the Bremer's hat. The plan is complete, the recording said. But there's one more act. The one no one expected. You see, vengeance was only the prelude. Art must always evolve. What we've created, what asterisk you asterisk have sustained is no longer mine alone. It belongs to the world. The piano swelled, and under it came faint voices, dozens of them, layered, harmonized. Singing the refrain that had haunted those who wronged me for a decade. Asterisk, you buried me, but I kept the pen, and every year I'll write again. For love, for loss, for those who lie, the song endures. I never die. Asterisk, the executor exhaled slowly. It's finished. Julian, he said softly. It's over. But my voice laughed. Not cruelly, not triumphantly. It was weary, knowing. Don't you see? It never ends. You'll deliver this one too. To the cemetery board, to the press, to whoever will listen. And because the laughter faded. The final line came quiet, deliberate, like a prayer. Asterisk, art is only alive when someone's still listening. Asterisk, the record hissed to silence. The executor knelt, packed away the gramophone, and opened the envelope. Inside was a folded letter and a small key. The handwriting on the envelope wasn't mine. Ito I. He frowned, unfolded the paper, and read. Asterisk, you've done your duty well, Charles, but the show is not yours to end. Go to the Lyric Theatre.